With the Singapore Grand Prix just a couple days away, let's get into our biggest headlines going into this weekend. What will be talked about for this weekend, but in general for Formula One, because the Singapore Grand Prix is bringing a lot of action on and off the track. So let's get into it. The first one I want to get into is signs point to an FIA approval of Andretti F1 entry. Now, this is practically already confirmed that Andretti will get approved by the FIA, but a lot more things come into question when speaking about the whole entire Andretti thing. Because it also relies on the Formula One teams, but there are things being put in place as to how Andretti is going to make themselves actually come into the sport. They are expected to come in 2025. The only team that's really publicly saying that there shouldn't be any more teams is, can you take a guess? It's another American team. It's the Haas team. I mean, they love to kill everything fun in Formula One. They don't bring you fun cars. They don't even bring you fun, entertaining moments other than Gunther Steiner on DTS. But in general, that team loves to be a buzzkill for Formula One, including getting Hülkenberg on second place and then falling back to 20th because they gave him an awesome car to drive. Regardless of that though, Haas is the only one kind of not approving of this, but every other team in secret is saying no more teams should be allowed because they're all pretty greedy for their money. But understandably so, more competition is more things to be worried about. Next thing I want to talk about is really the whole entire case with the Lewis Hamilton and Massa, really the whole entire championship thing. It's funny, this whole championship happening has now actually put into question if the 1994 Schumacher, really that world championship that he won, should be counted. Was the crash intentional at the end of that world championship that actually won him that? Should this be legal? So on. It's just putting a whole bunch of things out into the air. Well, I'm here to tell you this right now. For this to actually go through, for Massa to take the championship, I mean, he's even reaching out to Lewis Hamilton saying, hey, can you help me out with this case? You're like a fellow Brazilian citizenship. Come help out a fellow Brazilian. Well, obviously that's not going to happen. Not in 10 million different worlds, but it is being spoken about of the whole entire legal action against Crashgate. And the news, there's now like a deadline on the whole entire Massa case. And honestly, it's really getting nowhere. So that is kind of what's being spoken about for that in that case. Next off, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was this whole entire thing of the Haas team in the beginning of the year selling like their the tool part, the thing you see on the car that says like Haas tools being sold to Russia, funny enough. Like that was being spoken about. And it was like a $900 million lawsuit against Haas. Steiner is apparently laughing it off and saying that, oh, Gene Haas actually owes me that amount of money. So nothing's really coming out of it. It's still being fought in court. And there really isn't much more to this. It's just kind of at a standstill as of right now. But I thought it was interesting. Like this is still being spoken about. And it's pretty crazy that like $900 million lawsuit. Haas can't even afford $120 million in an F1 season. How are they going to afford $900 million in a lawsuit? Yeah, I know I'm just cooking Haas, but that is the Haas team. You either cook them or you hope and pray that they get some points, because it's hard to not like a small team, but it's also really easy to not like them when they don't put their full out passion into Formula One, in my personal opinion. Another thing is Norris talking about back issues, like constant pain that he is feeling throughout the season, which is a work in progress. He says before every race, every practice session and qualifying session, he stretches his back in a specific way to help with this. Now, in the beginning of 2022, we had the whole porpoising problem. People were aggravated on their back, and it really sucked when it came to the actual physicality for drivers. It's funny, a lot of them were complaining, but then Alonso was like, I don't care, let the car porpoise as much as it wants, I just want it fast. But on a real note though, when it comes to the actual aggravated issues of these drivers, the reason why this is happening is because the stiff suspension in these cars makes them so hard when they're actually being driven. And it's being spoken about in 2026 that we're going to actually get aero suspension. This should take a huge load off of actual drivers' structural real body, their backs and everything else like aching in the car. It would hurt a lot less because the actual suspension will be doing a lot of the work for taking that impact and G-forces. Obviously your neck is still going to have to be a strong part of it, but it is something that is being looked into. I think it would be cool. I think it would give a huge advantage probably to Red Bull though, so I'm not sure how I feel about that, because do we need them to dominate for another 15 years? But I can see as to how this is an issue in the sport with these super stiff cars right now. They got to look into 2026 making the cars a lot less stiff, maybe active suspension. Okay, let's talk about the weather in Singapore, because this is our favorite thing to speak about in the Formula One season. So on Friday, they're saying small rain during FP1, dry FP2. They're saying for Saturday, there's like a 40% chance of rain coming in for the final practice session. But when it comes to qualifying, it's slowly decreasing more and more and more. It's possible. I mean, with Singapore, weather comes in and out very quickly. That monsoon weather is pretty crazy over there, and it's really unpredictable. I mean, the radars can't really tell you much over there. On Sunday, it's also looking to be dry, but that doesn't really mean much. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a very hot race. If it's a hot race over there with that physicality, drivers sweat like crazy, sometimes losing even up to 10 pounds in these races. Pretty crazy the amount of weight they actually lose in like a Singapore Grand Prix, especially because sometimes they're literally coming out of those race suits with just like a pile of sweat in them. It's crazy how the Singapore Grand Prix is so physical. Something I really love about it. Not really a fan of the new track layout. I mean, let's see how it goes. Hopefully more overtaking actually happens, but I don't think it's gonna happen. Now, some big things I want to speak about. Now, this is probably the biggest part of the video. I didn't really give my word on TDO 18, the whole entire technical directive that's supposed to change the way that front wings flex and also how the floor is working because of the TD directive of last year. But let me give my word and let me show you some of these articles. So the Red Bull chief is adamant the Singapore GP rule change won't affect the team. This is being spoken about from Christian Horner. Now, maybe that won't affect them. From last year, the TD directive that came and them kind of having a loophole for it, that might affect them. Now, here is where the loophole is being spoken about. Some pictures that I have up on screen, I even had it in a thumbnail as well. It's these like things that come out of the car that's internally into the car. They look like these metal, like real stakes into the car. What is this? Well, some people are saying that this is a mechanical process being used by both Mercedes and by Red Bull to put down the floor or put up the floor to their liking, through control really, to make the car have this almost asymmetrical bending. Now, there are also people saying to me they look like supportive struts to aid rigidity, which we heard a big problem for most teams in 2022, meaning really to like suction in that floor and actually give you more downforce in more simple terms, because the more rigid your floor, the more it's more bent, the more downforce you'll actually be picking up because the air actually lifts the floor up and puts it more into that side pod, whether you have an undercut. That's why it works so well for Red Bull. They kind of use that to their advantage of lifting the air from the underfloor and making it so clamped into the side pod, giving more downforce. That's in simple terms, but they're saying that obviously this shouldn't be allowed, or there's a mechanical thing clamping down really on the flexibility of the floor, because if you can adjust your floor up and down, you'll be faster in the straights, but you'll also be hitting that plank a lot more, which they only test in certain spots. So it kind of takes away the purpose of adding a TD directive of last year that probably hurt Ferrari and really screwed them, but Red Bull and Mercedes came out of it brand new. Now, Mercedes is still far behind, so if this is a problem, and let's say they have to like unadd this off their car, it would hurt them badly. Now, for Red Bull, it could hurt them badly with the actual mix of TDO 18 and the technical directive of last year. If it really does work, then it could hurt them. I'm gonna tell you something though. Like with this TD and of TDs that we really get, it's really not meant to change the pecking order by a whole mile. There are teams like, I mean, blatantly, McLaren already came out and said that their front wing, they have to change. It'll be less than a 10. Like that was something that they actually said, that their flexibility on it is like there's something predicting is like not even a 10th. Red Bull came out a couple Grand Prix earlier saying also the whole entire wing flexing thing only gives you like about a 10th, so like it's really not that big of an issue. But the mix of the front wing and the underfloor, if you're kind of taking advantage of both, it could hurt the team because there are actual advantages to be gained there. But that is my standing on TDO 18. I really don't think it's something that's going to really push the grid up and down. I think teams are close enough. I know Red Bull's ahead, but let's see in the Singapore Grand Prix. I have high expectations for Aston Martin and for Mercedes. So let's see. Even Ferrari and McLaren could surprise here. So let me know your thoughts down below of the biggest headlines going into this weekend, and let me know if I missed anything. Please leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.